The Zelnari ship had been watching the edge of human space for 3 weeks. They were aliens who looked like tall, thin creatures with purple skin and long stalks on their heads instead of eyes. Their job was to spy on other races in the galaxy and learn their secrets. They were very good at it. Commander Velrax sat in his chair on the bridge. His eye stalks moved as he looked at the screen in front of him. Something big was out there in the dark of space. Something human. "What is that?" Velrax asked his crew. "It is a human warship, sir," said Trelk, his science officer. "The name on the side says USS Valkyrie. It looks damaged. Very damaged." Velrax leaned forward to get a better look. The human ship was big, maybe 300 meters long, but it was broken. There were holes in the side. Parts of the ship were open to space. No lights were moving on the outside. It looked dead. "Is anyone alive on that ship?" Velrax asked. Trelk worked at his station, pushing buttons and reading his screens. "I am not sure, sir. The power is very low. I cannot tell if there are living beings inside." Velrax thought about this. The humans were new to space travel. They had only learned how to travel faster than light about 20 years ago. Most of the older alien races thought humans were primitive and dumb, but Velrax was not so sure. He had read reports about humans. They were aggressive. They did not follow the normal rules. They made other aliens nervous. "This is a good chance," Velrax said. "The Galactic Council wants to know more about humans. They want to know how human ships work, how human weapons work, what humans think. If we scan this ship, we can learn everything." "Should we contact them, sir?" Trelk asked. "They might need help." "No," Velrax said. "If we contact them, they will refuse our scan. They will hide their secrets. But if they are damaged and quiet, we can look at everything. We can copy all their files. We can see inside their computers. This is too good to miss." The Zelnari were famous across the galaxy for their scanning technology. Other races could only see the outside of ships. They could detect heat and energy. But the Zelnari scanners were special. They could see through walls. They could read computer files from far away. They could even look at what happened in the past by reading special energy patterns. Nothing could hide from a Zelnari deep scan. "Take us closer," Velrax ordered. "Get us close enough for a full scan. I want everything from that ship. Their weapons, their crew lists, their mission files, their personal logs. Everything." The Zelnari ship moved through space without making a sound. It was smaller than the human warship, but much more advanced. It got closer and closer to the USS Valkyrie. The human ship just floated there like a dead whale in an ocean. "We are in position, sir," Trelk said. "Begin the scan," Velrax commanded. Trelk pushed buttons on his station. The Zelnari ship began to glow with a soft blue light. Beams of energy reached out from the alien vessel and touched the human warship. The beams wrapped around the USS Valkyrie like fingers grabbing a toy. On the Zelnari bridge, screens began to fill with information. Numbers and words poured across the displays. Pictures formed showing the inside of the human ship. The Zelnari computers were copying everything from the Valkyrie. Every file, every log, every secret. "This is amazing," Trelk said, his eyes wide. "The amount of data is incredible. Commander, you should see this." "What did you find?" Velrax asked. Trelk looked confused and worried. "Sir, the crew count. The ship has 247 humans on it, but the medical files say that 112 of them are dead." Velrax felt cold. "Dead? But you said you could not read life signs. Maybe they left the ship. Maybe other ships picked them up." "No, sir," Trelk said slowly. "They are still there. The dead ones are still on the ship. They never left." Velrax stood up from his chair. This did not make sense. When someone died on a ship, you removed the body. You put it in a special room or you sent it out into space with a funeral. You did not keep dead bodies on a working ship. That was crazy. That was wrong. Are you sure? Velrax asked. Yes, sir. The scan is very clear. 112 dead humans, all still on board. Some of them have been dead for days. Why would they do that? Velrax whispered. Why would they keep their dead? I do not know, sir. Velrax sat back down. He felt sick. Pull up their recent history files. I want to know what happened to this ship. I want to know why half the crew is dead. Trelk worked at his station again. After a moment, words appeared on the main screen. It was a report written in human language, but the Zelnari computers translated it into words Velrax could read. The report was from the ship's captain, Commander Jake Morrison. It told the story of a battle. The USS Valkyrie had been on patrol when 3 enemy ships attacked them. The enemy was a race called the Kresh. They were known for being violent and cruel. The Kresh had surprised the Valkyrie and hit them hard. The battle had been terrible. The human ship had fought back, but it was 3 against 1. The Valkyrie had killed one of the enemy ships and damaged another. But the price was high. Very high. Show me their medical records, Velrax said. The medical files appeared on the screen. Velrax read them and felt his stomach turn. The human medical bay had been full of wounded and dying people. But there were not enough doctors, not enough medicine, not enough room. The humans had made a choice. They decided who would get help and who would not. Some people were listed as expectant. That meant they were expected to die. The doctors would not waste time and supplies on them. They would die alone while the doctors helped people who might live. This is horrible, Trelk said. They let their own people die to save resources. But Velrax was reading more. He was learning more. And what he learned made everything worse. Focus the scan on the ship's current status, Velrax ordered. Show me where the crew is right now. Show me what they are doing. The scan went deeper. The Zelnari technology showed the inside of the USS Valkyrie in perfect detail. Velrax could see every room, every hallway, every person, and he could see every body. Sir, Trelk said, his voice shaking, the dead crew members, they are everywhere. They are on the bridge, in the engine room, at the weapon stations. The living humans are working right next to them. Velrax looked at the screen. He saw a human man sitting in the captain's chair on the bridge. The scan identified him as Commander Jake Morrison. He looked tired and thin. To his left was a human woman named Lisa Chen. She was alive, working at her station. To the right of Morrison was another station. A man sat there, strapped into his seat. His hands were on the controls, but he was dead. The scan said his name was Lieutenant Ben Parker. He had died 3 days ago, but his body was still there, still at his post. Why? Trelk asked. Why would they leave the dead at their star? The Zelnari computers began playing a video file. It was a personal log from Commander Jake Morrison. The human captain's face filled the screen on the Zelnari bridge. Morrison looked bad. His face was dirty and cut. Dark circles sat under his eyes like bruises. A fresh scar ran down his left cheek. He looked like he had not slept in days. Personal log, Commander Jake Morrison, the human said. His voice was rough and tired. Day 43 of our mission. We fought the Kresh and we lived. But the cost was too high. We lost 112 good people. The ship has holes in it. The main reactor is damaged. We are running on backup power only. Life support is failing in many areas. Morrison stopped talking and rubbed his face with both hands. He looked like he wanted to cry, but was too tired even for that. I have made a decision, Morrison continued. I will not throw the dead bodies into space. We do not have power to waste on funeral ceremonies. We need every bit of energy to stay alive. And we need the mass. The bodies provide weight. They help balance the ship. But there is more to it than that. Morrison looked straight at the camera. Velrax saw something in the human's eyes that made him afraid. It was not madness. It was something worse. It was cold, hard determination. "We need to remember," Morrison said. "Every single person who died protecting this ship, every person who died so that humanity could have a place in this galaxy. I will not let them become just names on a list. They stay with us. They stay at their stations. They fought here, and they will rest here until we get home." The video ended. Velrax and Trelk sat in silence. The only sound was the quiet hum of the ship's engines. "They are keeping the dead for feelings," Trelk said. "For memory. This is not logical. This is not sane." But Velrax was beginning to understand something that made his skin crawl. He pulled up another video file. This one was from a young human woman named Amy Rodriguez. She worked in the engine room. The video showed Amy standing in a large room full of machines. Behind her, Velrax could see 3 dead bodies. They were tied to the wall, still wearing their work clothes. Their eyes were closed. Their skin was gray. "Hey, Chief," Amy said, and Velrax realized she was talking to one of the corpses. "We got the coolant system working again. I know you said we could not fix it without the right parts, but you also taught me to never give up. You taught me that impossible just means nobody has done it yet." Amy smiled, but it was a sad smile. Tears ran down her face. "We are going to make it home, Chief," she said to the dead man. "All of us, every single one of us. I promise you that." The video ended. Velrax felt sick. These humans were not acting normal. They were talking to corpses. They were making promises to the dead. They were keeping bodies at workstations. "Check their tactical systems," Velrax ordered. "Show me their weapons status." Trelk worked at his controls. New information appeared on the screens. What Velrax saw made his blood freeze. The USS Valkyrie was not just limping home, it was still ready to fight. The weapons were on standby, not turned off. The crew was still running practice drills. The ship's computer was still planning for battles. "Show me what weapons they have left," Velrax said. Numbers appeared on the screen. The Valkyrie had used most of its ammunition fighting the Kresh. But what was left was still enough to destroy several large ships, nuclear missiles, railguns that fired metal slugs at incredible speed, plasma torpedoes, mines filled with explosive fire. But one weapon caught Velrax's eye. It was called Contingency Protocol 001. It was connected directly to the ship's main reactor. "What is that?" Velrax asked, pointing at the screen. Trelk opened the file and read it. His face went pale. His eye stalks drooped. "Sir, it is a self-destruct system. But it is not like any I have seen before. It does not just blow up the ship. It takes all the power from the reactor and pushes it through the weapons at the same time. It creates one massive explosion." "How big?" Velrax asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Trelk did some calculations. "The blast would reach 12,000 kilometers in all directions. It would destroy everything in that space. Everything." Velrax sat back in his chair. He understood now. The humans had not just kept their dead. They had turned their damaged ship into a trap. Anyone who came close, thinking the Valkyrie was helpless, would find something terrible. They would find a crew so dedicated that death itself could not stop them from fighting. "Check their communications," Velrax said. "Have they called for help?" Trelk nodded. "Yes, sir. 3 days ago. But they also sent a message to their military command. They told their leaders that if any enemy tries to board the ship or destroy it, they will use the self-destruct. They will blow themselves up and take the enemy with them." "They would kill themselves just to kill their enemy?" Velrax whispered. "It seems so, sir." Velrax ordered the scan to go even deeper. He needed to understand these creatures. The Zelnari had scanned thousands of species. They had studied countless races, but they had never seen anything like this. A file appeared on the screen. It was from human military training, something called the Warrior's Code. Velrax began to read it, and each word made him more afraid. The document explained the basic rules that every human soldier learned. It talked about duty and honor. But one part made Velrax's hearts beat faster. We do not surrender. We do not run away unless ordered. We do not leave our dead behind. We do not stop fighting until the enemy is dead or we are dead. These are not suggestions. These are the laws that keep humanity alive. Another file opened automatically. This one was from a human thinker, a philosopher. Velrax read it and felt true fear for the first time in his life. Humanity survived ice ages and diseases and wars. We almost went extinct many times. But we lived. We lived because we refused to quit. We lived because we looked at death and said no. We lived because when the end came for us, we grabbed it and pulled it down into the grave with us. Trelk's voice broke through Velrax's thoughts. Sir, I am detecting something. The Valkyrie's computer has been watching us. It has been watching us this whole time. Velrax jumped up from his seat. What? They know we are here. They have known since we started scanning. The damaged hull, the low power, it was all fake. It was a trick. Before Velrax could respond, the communication system on the Zelnari bridge came alive. A voice spoke through the speakers. It was Jake Morrison. Attention, Zelnari ship. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the USS Valkyrie. We know you are scanning us. We have been watching you. You have broken our laws. You have spied on a military ship. This is an act of war. Velrax grabbed the communication controls with shaking hands. Commander Morrison, we meant no harm. We thought your ship was abandoned. We wanted to help. There was silence for a long moment. Then Morrison's voice came back, cold as ice. You scanned us for 47 minutes. You looked at our personal files. You read our private logs. You copied our tactical information. That is not help. That is spying. On the main screen, Velrax watched in horror as the USS Valkyrie began to turn. The damaged warship moved slowly, pointing its remaining weapons at the Zelnari vessel. Even broken and half dead, the Valkyrie was a threat. However, Morrison said, I will let you go, but only if you do something for me. Anything, Velrax said quickly. You will go back to your government. You will tell them about us. Tell the communication ended and the screen went dark. Velrax stood on his bridge, shaking. His crew looked at him with fear in their eyes. They had just been caught spying on a species that kept their dead at battle stations. A species that would rather blow themselves up than surrender. Get us out of here, Velrax ordered. Maximum speed, now. The Zelnari ship turned and began to move away from the USS Valkyrie. Velrax watched on the rear sensors as the human warship grew smaller. Even as they left, he could see the Valkyrie's weapons tracking them. Morrison was making sure they really left. Sir, should we erase the scan data? Trelk asked. Morrison might demand we delete it. No, Velrax said. We keep it all. Our government needs to see this. The Galactic Council needs to know what humans really are. The trip back to the Zelnari homeworld took 3 days. During that entire time, nobody on Velrax's crew talked much. They had all seen the scan results. They had all watched the videos. They had all learned the truth about humanity. When they finally reached home, Velrax went straight to the High Council. The council was made up of the oldest and wisest Zelnari leaders. They met in a large room with tall ceilings and walls covered in screens. Velrax stood in the center of the room and uploaded all the data from the scan. The council members watched in silence as the information played on the screens around them. They saw the USS Valkyrie. They saw the dead crew still at their posts. They heard Morrison's words. They read the human military code. When it was over, the room was silent for a long time. Finally, the High Counselor spoke. His name was Kelvox, and he was over 200 years old. He had seen many things in his long life, but Velrax could tell that this had shocked even him. Commander Velrax, Kelvox said slowly. What is your opinion? Are the humans dangerous? Velrax thought carefully before answering. He thought about Morrison sitting with his dead crew. He thought about Amy Rodriguez talking to her dead chief. He thought about the 135 survivors who refused to leave, who refused to give up even when half their friends were dead. They are not dangerous, High Counselor, Velrax said. They are worse than that. They are unstoppable. Explain, Kelvox ordered. Every species we have ever met has a breaking point, Velrax said. A moment when they give up, when fear beats duty, when staying alive becomes more important than the mission. We Zelnari would have left that ship. We would have called for rescue and waited. The Kresh would have run away. The Vorgans would have surrendered. Velrax pulled up the image of the USS Valkyrie on the main screen. But not humans. Humans do not have a breaking point. You can kill them, yes. You can destroy their ships. You can win battles against them. But you cannot make them quit. That ship should have been empty. Those crew members should have left their dead in space. Commander Morrison should have shut down all weapons and just waited for rescue. He looked around at all the council members. But they did not do that. Because humans have made stubbornness into a way to survive. They have turned refusing to quit into a weapon. Any species that can look at death and say not today is a species that will eventually rule the galaxy. One way or another. Kelvox was quiet for a moment. What do you suggest we do? Make them our friends, Velrax said, because I never want to fight them as enemies. The council talked for hours. They reviewed all the data. They watched all the videos. In the end, they made a decision. They would send a message to the human government. They would apologize for the scan. They would offer friendship and alliance. But they also did something else. They sent a classified report to all Zelnari ships and stations. The report included everything from the USS Valkyrie scan, every detail, every video, every piece of information. The report ended with a simple warning. Do not engage human military vessels in combat unless absolutely necessary. Humans fight hardest when wounded. Humans are most dangerous when desperate. Never assume a damaged human ship is helpless. The report spread through Zelnari space in days. From there, it leaked to other species. The story of the USS Valkyrie became known across the galaxy. Other races read it with shock and fear. The Kresh, who had attacked the Valkyrie, suddenly became very quiet. They stopped raiding human patrols. Their leaders began sending peace messages to Earth. The Vorgans, a race of merchants, immediately offered trade deals to humanity. They wanted humans as customers, not enemies. Even the proud Drelnari Empire, which had looked down on humans as primitives, began to show respect. Their ambassadors started being polite at Galactic Council meetings. Meanwhile, the USS Valkyrie continued to float in space, waiting. 3 weeks after the Zelnari scan, human rescue ships finally arrived. There were 5 ships in total, led by a large vessel called the USS Guardian. The captain of the Guardian was a woman named Helen Brooks. She was a veteran with 30 years of service. She had seen combat many times. But what she found on the Valkyrie made even her heart break. Brooks and her team boarded the damaged warship carefully. They wore spacesuits and carried medical supplies. When they entered the bridge, they found Morrison standing at attention. Behind him, his surviving crew had gathered, and around them, arranged in neat rows, were the bodies of the dead. Morrison had cleaned them. He had put them in their dress uniforms. He had arranged them like they were standing in formation for inspection. "Permission to come aboard, Commander," Brooks said, saluting. "Permission granted, Captain," Morrison replied. His voice was hoarse. "Welcome to the Valkyrie." Brooks looked at the dead crew members. She looked at the living ones, who were thin and tired but still standing straight. She understood what had happened here. This was not just a rescue mission. This was a recovery of fallen warriors. "We will bring them all home," Brooks said quietly. "Every single one of them." Morrison's eyes filled with tears, but he did not let them fall. "Thank you, Captain." The rescue operation took 2 days. Medical teams treated the survivors. Engineers worked to make the Valkyrie stable enough to tow, and a special honor guard carefully moved each of the dead crew members onto the Guardian. Amy Rodriguez personally carried her chief's body. She would not let anyone else do it. She walked slowly through the corridors, tears running down her face, but her steps were steady. When all the survivors and all the dead were finally off the Valkyrie, Morrison was the last to leave. He stood on his bridge one more time, looking at the empty stations, at the blood stains on the floor, at the scorch marks on the walls. The ceremony for the fallen crew of the USS Valkyrie lasted 3 hours. 112 names were read aloud. 112 families received folded flags. 112 heroes were laid to rest with full military honors. Jake Morrison stood at attention through it all. He did not cry. He did not move. He just stood there, watching as each of his crew members was honored. When it was over, he saluted one last time and walked away. The next day, Morrison and his surviving crew were called to military headquarters. They were taken to a large room where Fleet Admiral George Kent was waiting. Kent was the highest-ranking officer in the United Earth Alliance military. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. "Commander Morrison," Kent said, "what you and your crew did out there is now known across the entire galaxy. The Zelnari have shared their scan data with other races. Everyone knows about the Valkyrie." Morrison stood at attention. "Sir, I apologize if we created a diplomatic problem. We were just trying to survive." Kent shook his head. "You did not create a problem, Commander. You created something much more valuable. You created fear." He pulled up a display showing messages from different alien governments. There were dozens of them. Requests for peaceful contact, offers of trade, apologies for past insults. "The Kresh have asked for a peace treaty," Kent said. "The same Kresh who attacked your ship. They are afraid of us now. The Vorgans are offering favorable trade terms. The Drelnari have invited us to join the Galactic Council as full members, not just observers." Morrison looked confused. "I do not understand, sir. We lost. We barely survived." "You did not lose," Kent said firmly. "You won. You showed every species in this galaxy that humans do not quit, that we fight until we cannot fight anymore, that we honor our dead by carrying them with us. That scared them more than any weapon ever could." Kent walked over to Morrison and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Son, the Zelnari report said something interesting. Their commander, Velrax, told his government that humans are not dangerous. He said we are worse. He said we are inevitable. Do you know what that means?" Morrison shook his head. "It means they think we cannot be stopped," Kent explained. "It means they think that no matter what happens, humanity will keep going, keep expanding, keep growing stronger. And they are right." Kent stepped back and picked up a small box from his desk. He opened it to reveal a medal. It was the Star of Valor, the highest military honor Earth could give. "Commander Jake Morrison, for actions above and beyond the call of duty, for leadership in the face of impossible odds, and for bringing your crew home against all chances, I award you the Star of Valor." Kent pinned the medal to Morrison's chest. Then he saluted. Morrison saluted back, and for the first time since the battle, he let himself feel pride. Over the next few weeks, each survivor of the Valkyrie received medals and honors. They were given leave to visit their families. They were treated as heroes wherever they went. But Morrison noticed something. People looked at them differently now. There was respect, yes, but also a little fear. People knew what the Valkyrie crew had done. They knew about the bodies kept at the stations. They knew about the refusal to surrender. One day, Morrison was walking through a park when a young boy ran up to him. The boy could not have been more than 8 years old. "Are you Commander Morrison?" the boy asked. "From the Valkyrie?" "Yes, I am," Morrison said, kneeling down to the boy's level. "Is it true you kept your dead crew members on the ship? My dad said you worked next to bodies." Morrison thought about how to answer. He could tell the boy it was not that simple. He could explain the reasons, but instead, he decided to tell the truth. "Yes," Morrison said, "it is true. We kept them with us. They were our friends and our family. We were not going to leave them behind." "Were you scared?" the boy asked. "Every single day," Morrison admitted. "But being scared is okay. Being a hero does not mean you are not afraid. It means you do what needs to be done even when you are afraid." The boy nodded seriously, then ran back to his parents. Morrison stood up and continued his walk. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the effects of the Valkyrie incident continued to spread. The story became legend. Songs were written about it. Artists created paintings of the damaged ship floating in space, its dead crew still at their posts. But the most important effect was in how other species saw humanity. Before the Valkyrie, humans were seen as newcomers, young and inexperienced, easy to push around. After the Valkyrie, everything changed. Now, when human diplomats spoke at the Galactic Council, other species listened. When human merchants negotiated trade deals, they got better terms. When human ships traveled through space, other vessels gave them respect. The Kresh, who had once raided human colonies for sport, now avoided human space completely. Their leaders told stories to their children about the ghost ship crewed by the living and the dead. Stories meant to teach fear. The Zelnari became humanity's closest allies. Velrax personally requested to be assigned as a liaison to the human fleet. He said he wanted to understand humans better, but really, he wanted to make sure his people stayed on humanity's good side. Even the powerful Drelnari Empire, which controlled a quarter of the galaxy, began treating humans as equals. Their emperor sent a personal message to Earth's leaders, praising the courage of the Valkyrie crew. 6 months after the rescue, Morrison was given a new command, a brand new warship, the USS Defiant. It was bigger and more powerful than the Valkyrie, but Morrison made sure to bring something from his old ship. In his ready room, he hung a photograph. It showed the bridge crew of the Valkyrie, taken the day before the Kresh attack. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was alive. Lieutenant Ben Parker stood in the back row, young and full of hope. Morrison looked at that photograph every morning. It reminded him of what he had lost, but it also reminded him of why he kept fighting. On the wall next to the photograph, he placed a small metal plaque. It had the names of all 112 crew members who had died. Under the names was a simple phrase, "They stayed at their posts." The USS Defiant became one of the most respected ships in the fleet. Other captains wanted to serve with Morrison. Young officers requested transfers to his ship. Everyone knew that if you served under Morrison, you were serving under a man who would never leave you behind. One day, Morrison was called to a meeting with Admiral Kent again. When he arrived, he found Kent with several other high-ranking officers and a group of alien diplomats. "Commander Morrison," Kent said, "I would like you to meet Ambassador Kelvox of the Zelnari High Council." Morrison recognized the name. Kelvox was the leader who had received Velrax's report about the Valkyrie. The old Zelnari stepped forward. He was tall and thin, like all his species, with wise eyes on the ends of his stalks. "Commander Morrison," Kelvox said in accented but clear English, "I have wanted to meet you for some time. Your actions have changed how my people see humanity, how all species see humanity." "I was just trying to keep my crew alive," Morrison said simply. "Yes," Kelvox said, "and that is what makes it so powerful. You were not trying to send a message. You were not trying to scare anyone. You were simply doing what you thought was right. And in doing so, you showed the galaxy the true nature of your species." 2 years passed after the Valkyrie incident. In that time, humanity's place in the galaxy changed completely. What started as a story of survival became a legend that changed how every alien species viewed humans. The Galactic Council officially invited Earth to become a full member. This was rare. Most species had to wait centuries to earn that honor. But the Council members had seen the Zelnari report. They had heard the stories. They knew that humans were different. On the day Earth joined the Council, representatives from 200 alien species gathered to watch. Jake Morrison was there too, standing in his dress uniform with his medals on his chest. The Star of Valor gleamed in the light. The council chamber was huge, with seats rising up in circles like an arena. At the center was a platform where speakers stood. The human representative, President Maria Santos, walked to that platform to give Earth's acceptance speech. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Santos began, "humanity is grateful for this invitation. We are young compared to many of you. We have much to learn. But we come here today not just as a new member, but as a species that has proven its worth." She paused and looked around at all the alien faces watching her. 2 years ago, one of our ships was attacked. The USS Valkyrie fought against impossible odds. Half the crew died. The ship was crippled. By all logic, they should have surrendered or died. But they did not. They stayed at their posts. They refused to quit. They brought themselves and their fallen comrades home. Santos gestured to Morrison, who stood at attention. "Commander Morrison and his crew showed the galaxy who we are. We are humans. We do not abandon our own. We do not give up when things get hard. We carry our dead with us because we refuse to forget. That is humanity. That is what we bring to this council." The chamber erupted in applause. Not all of it was friendly. Some species clapped because they respected humanity. Others clapped because they feared what might happen if they did not show respect. But it did not matter why they clapped. What mattered was that they did. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. After the ceremony, Morrison found himself surrounded by alien diplomats. They all wanted to shake his hand. They all wanted to say they had met the commander of the Valkyrie. One alien, a tall being covered in blue scales, pushed through the crowd. He was a Kresh commander named Vexor. The Kresh were the species that had attacked the Valkyrie. "Commander Morrison," Vexor said in his harsh, clicking language. A translator device made his words understandable. "I commanded one of the ships that attacked yours. I must speak with you." Morrison tensed, but he nodded. "What do you want to say?" "I want to apologize," Vexor said, shocking everyone around them. "My people made a terrible mistake. We thought humans were weak. We thought your ships would run or surrender. We were wrong." Vexor lowered his head, a sign of respect among the Kresh. "You destroyed one of our ships and crippled another. But more than that, you fought with honor. You stayed with your dead. In Kresh culture, we honor warriors who refuse to abandon their fallen brothers. You and your crew are true warriors. I am ashamed we attacked you." Morrison did not know what to say. He had hated the Kresh for 2 years. But seeing this warrior apologize changed something in him. "Your apology is accepted," Morrison said finally. "Let us hope our people never fight again." Vexor nodded and walked away. Morrison watched him go, realizing that the legend of the Valkyrie had even changed the hearts of their enemies. Meanwhile, the USS Valkyrie itself had become a memorial. The damaged ship was not scrapped. Instead, it was towed to Earth orbit and turned into a museum. People could walk through the corridors where the crew had fought and died. They could see the bridge where Morrison had sat with his dead crew. They could stand in the engine room where Amy Rodriguez had talked to her fallen chief. Millions of people visited every year. School children came on field trips. Military cadets came to learn. Even aliens came, wanting to understand what had happened on that ship. In one of the corridors, there was a wall with photographs of every crew member who had died. Visitors would stop and read the names. Sometimes they would leave flowers or small tokens of respect. Ben Parker's photo was there, showing him smiling in his uniform. Under his picture was a quote from Morrison's log. "He stayed at his post, even in death. That is the kind of warrior humanity needs." The story of the Valkyrie also changed how humans saw themselves. Before, many people on Earth were not sure about space exploration. It was dangerous and expensive. Why bother? But after the Valkyrie, everything changed. Recruitment for the space fleet increased by 300%. Young people wanted to serve. They wanted to be like Morrison and his crew. They wanted to prove that they, too, would never quit. New ships were built and named after the fallen crew members: the USS Parker, the USS Rodriguez, the USS Chen. Each ship carried the name of a hero into the stars. Military academies began teaching the Valkyrie incident as a case study, not just as a battle, but as an example of leadership and determination. Morrison's decision to keep the dead at their posts was analyzed and debated. Some people thought it was wrong, others thought it was genius, but everyone agreed on one thing: it had worked, it had kept the survivors focused, it had honored the fallen, and it had sent a message to the galaxy that humans were not to be taken lightly. 5 years after the incident, Morrison was promoted to admiral. He was given command of an entire fleet, but he never forgot the Valkyrie. He never forgot the 112 crew members who had died under his command. Every year on the anniversary of the battle, Morrison would visit the Valkyrie Memorial. He would walk through the ship alone, touching the walls, remembering. He would stop at each photograph on the memorial wall and say the person's name out loud. When he reached Ben Parker's photo, he would pause the longest. "Still at your post, Lieutenant," Morrison would say quietly, "just like I promised." The legend of the Valkyrie spread beyond just military circles. Artists created paintings and sculptures. Writers wrote books and poems. Musicians composed songs. The story became part of human culture, a reminder of what humans could endure. One popular song was called "They Stayed." It was sung at military ceremonies and memorials. The chorus went, "They stayed at their posts when the battle was done. They stayed with their brothers under the sun. They stayed though the darkness came, calling them home. They stayed because warriors never fight alone." The song made Morrison cry every time he heard it, not from sadness, but from pride. His crew had not died in vain. Their sacrifice had meaning. Their memory lived on. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Zelnari commander Velrax had become something of a celebrity among his people. He was the one who had discovered the truth about humans. He was the one who had warned the galaxy. Velrax eventually retired from active duty and became a teacher. He taught young Zelnari about different species and cultures. But his favorite lesson was always about humanity. He would show his students the scan data from the Valkyrie. He would play Morrison's logs. He would explain how the crew had refused to give up. "Learn from this," Velrax would tell his students. "Learn that the most dangerous enemy is not the one with the biggest weapons. It is the one who refuses to quit, the one who will fight until their last breath, the one who honors their dead by becoming stronger." He would pause and look at each student. Humanity has that quality. They are young and their technology is primitive. But they have something more valuable than technology. They have spirit. They have determination. They have the ability to look at death and say, "Not today." Velrax's students would go on to become diplomats and officers and leaders, and they would remember his lessons about humanity. They would remember the Valkyrie. 10 years after the incident, Earth built a new flagship for its fleet. It was the biggest and most powerful ship humans had ever made. When it came time to name the ship, there was only one choice. The new USS Valkyrie was launched with Morrison himself giving the christening speech. The ship was 3 times the size of the original. It had weapons that could destroy planets. It had shields that could withstand a star's heat. It was a symbol of how far humanity had come. But on the bridge of this mighty warship, Morrison installed something simple. It was the captain's chair from the original Valkyrie. The same chair he had sat in during the battle. The same chair where he had made the decision to keep the dead at their posts. "This chair reminds us," Morrison said at the launch ceremony, "that power is not about having the biggest ship or the best weapons. Power is about having the courage to do what is right, even when it is hard, even when it costs everything." He sat in the old chair, running his hands over the armrests that still bore scorch marks from the battle. The crew of the first Valkyrie taught the galaxy that humans do not quit. This new Valkyrie will continue that lesson. We will explore the stars. We will defend the innocent. We will honor our fallen. And we will never, ever give up. The crowd cheered, and the new USS Valkyrie began its first voyage. As it flew into deep space, it passed the old Valkyrie Memorial in orbit. Morrison stood on the bridge and saluted his old ship. "Fair winds and following seas," he whispered, using an old Navy blessing. "You served us well." And somewhere in the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, aliens looked at the stars and thought about humanity. Some with fear, some with respect, some with friendship. But all of them knew the truth. Humans were here to stay. They had proven it with blood and sacrifice. They had shown that they would fight for every inch of space they claimed, that they would honor every life lost, that they would never stop pushing forward. The story of the Valkyrie had become more than just a story. It had become a promise, a warning, a declaration. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they would never leave. Kelvox pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A hologram appeared, showing the USS Valkyrie as it had been when the Zelnari first scanned it. Damaged, dark, silent. "When Velrax found your ship, he thought he was scanning a wreck," Kelvox said. "He thought he would learn about human technology and tactics. Instead, he learned about human spirit, about human determination, about human loyalty to the dead." The hologram changed, showing Morrison on his bridge with Ben Parker's body beside him. "This image has been shown on 1,000 worlds," Kelvox continued. "It has been analyzed by 100 different species, and they all come to the same conclusion. Humans are not like other races. Humans do not give up. Humans do not forget. Humans do not leave anyone behind." He turned off the hologram and looked Morrison in the eye. "You have made humanity powerful, Commander, not through weapons or threats, but through example. That is the greatest power of all." "We made it," he whispered to the empty room. "We all made it home." Then he turned and walked away, leaving the ghost ship behind. The trip back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, word of the Valkyrie spread through human space. People on every human colony and ship heard the story. They heard about the crew that refused to abandon their dead, that refused to surrender, that turned their dying ship into a weapon. When the Guardian finally reached Earth, there were thousands of people waiting. The news stations were broadcasting live. Military officials stood at attention. Families of the crew waited in tears. Morrison and his crew walked off the Guardian onto the landing platform. They looked small and tired in their clean uniforms, but they walked with their heads high. Behind them came the honor guard, carrying the bodies of the fallen. Each casket was draped with the flag of the United Earth Alliance. Each one was carried by 6 soldiers who marched in perfect step. That humanity does not forget our dead. Tell them that we carry our fallen into battle if we must. Tell them that a human warship is most dangerous when it is damaged and desperate. The screen showed Morrison's face now. He was sitting on his bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his crew, but his eyes were clear and his voice was strong. Tell them that if they ever attack humanity, we will show them real horror. because we do not fight for land or money. We fight for every person we have lost. We fight for the memory of every dead soldier. We fight because we are the only species crazy enough to keep corpses at our workstations and fly into battle anyway." Morrison leaned closer to the camera. "We are humanity. We do not know how to quit. We do not know how to surrender. And we do not know how to die quietly. Remember that." "Tions? This makes no sense." Velrax could not answer. He was starting to feel afraid. Something was very wrong here. This was not normal behavior. This was not how any race in the galaxy acted. "Go deeper," Velrax said. "Access their personal files. I need to understand this. I need to know why they are doing this." The scan continued to pull information from the Valkyrie. The Zelnari ship collected more and more data. Personal logs, private messages, video recordings. Velrax knew they were about to learn something terrible. He could feel it. But he had to know. He had to understand what kind of creatures humans really were.